if the only lesbian in your work is an abusive rageaholic with vague angst issues and a codependent relationship to a protagonist, you're a huge turd.
Oh no.
If you sideline every Do not attempt to adjust your YouTube app or webpage. That was not some kind of demonic intrusion from an outside force. This is We Are Not Alive. I'm Henry.
And I'm Gus, and somehow I don't think the name of the channel has ever been more accurate.
This is going to be a bit of a strange one. This is technically part of the Two Professional Writers series, which, by the way, we've got some really fun plans for that I don't want to spoil, but keep an eye on this space for the next few months. However, one thing that you will not be seeing on this channel and on the Two Professional Writers series is an attempt by me and Gus to revisit the place where it all started. Lily Orchard's infamous 100 quote-unquote simple writing tips from Twitter, posted, I believe, on November 15th, the day before my birthday in 2020, and we were never the same since.
So that was 5 years ago. The tips were posted on Twitter. Everybody was reacting to them. Friend of the channel, but not yet contributor, Addison Peacock, got those tips to Henry. And me, who had to squeeze this apparent new video concept into the time I had in the morning before I drove off 2 towns over to go to my service job. That was the format in which we first encountered the 100 tips of Lily Orchard. So if there was this vibe the first time of me, someone familiar with Lily Orchard, feeling very frantic and like I didn't have a lot of time to process what I was going through in the midst of that, that was what was happening there. And also, we were so young.
Yeah. So innocent, babes in the woods.
Yeah.
We had no idea the kind of person that Lily Orchard was beyond just weirdo who gets inordinately angry about media for children on the internet.
In the video, I was the one who came in with a little bit more of a attempt to play devil's advocate. Little did I know she was actually the devil.
Yeah.
Like, the crimes of Lily Orchard are out there. We're not going to relitigate them because it's a drag to talk about, and we're also just not that kind of channel, but it's out there, and it sucks, and it certainly would reframe, and did reframe, the way we felt staring down the barrel of those tips 5 years later in this attempt to look back at them and see what we learned, just like in the same way that we look back on our own work.
What this video is going to be is a dissection and a post-mortem of our failed attempt to revisit those tips. We genuinely, at a point, lost the willpower. And if you don't believe us, if you want to have the full miserable experience for some reason, we've posted the entirety of the, 55 odd minutes on that video that we spent completely unedited. It is the first time you will see an utterly raw audio track discussing those tips right up until the moment where you hear us lose the will to continue. That's over on the Patreon for $1. But if you don't have that dollar to spare, that's totally fine, because we are gonna discuss what it was like to go back to do that, what we think has changed about our perspectives on writing and why, and just how it feels to be utterly defeated by something that, in our naivete, we felt ready to conquer.
I think one of the big things that I hate about this Lily Orchard writing tip list, because I feel like we have reserved the right to get mean.
Oh, 100. Fuck
is
her.
That
who gives a shit?
Exactly.
She's a monster.
In these tips, they arrived day one as spoiled milk, and now they are like a fungal mold that is spewing all kinds
from The Last of Us, and it's trying to bite you now.
The thing about it is that so much of the vague stuff, like the talking about different specific television shows at the time, that was already so in poor taste and so not constructive at the time. But now Arrow, Steven Universe, and all of its spin-offs, and She-Ra and the Princess of Power, both being these things that are off the air and
have
celebrated
been for ages.
and considered, and have been considered like stepping stones towards new things, like, the Owl House, which was allowed to take this idea of a sort of queer fantasy for kids with whimsical settings and all of that and go further. Like, those influential shows never needed some YouTuber to look down her nose and pretend that her preferences had any bearing on real professionals trying to make things work behind all these different studio mandates. And the industry has only gone in a direction where increasingly the people who are fighting to make this stuff happen are having the executives strangle out all of the creativity from most of their things. It's a miracle whenever one of these things makes it through and touches its intended audience. And that was true then, and it's true now.
Yeah, I think that really does distill what's extra infuriating about it is, I think, it is seeing the bottle of poison that, with the benefit of hindsight, you now know has poisoned the well. Because the thing is, Lily Orchard obviously has been revealed for what she is. I think you will find very few people on the whole who take her seriously as a figure of media criticism or as someone who should be listened to on writing. And thankfully not many people took her seriously back then. But I think we are seeing the kind of Lily Orchard light everywhere. Not to say everyone is doing it, not generalizing, but just enough that this viewpoint, which is to say the viewpoint that acts like creators in the studio system have total control over their work, that acts like portraying any kind of moral complexity or darkness in a work is endorsing that. That revels in moral absolutism and black and white, and that shames sex and kink and self-discovery and development along those lines, or relationships existing outside of the very narrow dynamics, and this idea that works should cater to shippers on the other end before all else. There is enough of those people now that regrettably, at a point, they have to be taken a little bit seriously in the way that Lily Orchard never could.
And that's the thing about the ones that are taken seriously. It's so often because they project all of these traits onto other people who may also be equally as guilty, but there is enough of these people whom the core philosophy is my preferences are so objective that any exception to it is an insult to the mediums I've based my entire career around. And there's enough of these people that they are forming fractious factions and warring with each other. I won't. And YouTube is made up of so many of these little media ideologues who have given up on influencing the real world or adding any kind of genuine cogent worldview to it, that they resort to the easily controlled Lincoln Log world of fiction where everything can be, well, I know the 5 trope names that allow me to decide whether or not this is good or bad, and any connection to the real world or any nuance or anything that this work is trying to explore it's sidelined by criticism, the purpose of which is to override the existing text with tract.
Yeah, no, it's completely true. And obviously, this is not a call-out video. We've got no interest in, starting fights with people.
And also, if we were to start calling out everybody who engages in this sort of thing on YouTube, this video would be 24 years long.
Yeah, no, it's true. And as we've discussed in videos like Two Professional Writers Are Over, we're not immune to it. Human beings are, to some extent, cursed with the fact that we are, to some degree, locked inside our own perspectives. And it takes, frankly, a lot of work to start seeing things the way other people do and not having that solipsistic view of like life and art that you are the ideal audience member.
Exactly. And that's the like deplorable thing about the way that people like Lily Orchard treat media is that, as Roger Ebert once said, movies are a machine that produces empathy. And that is true of any kind of storytelling medium. The benefit of stories is that they are made from someone else's perspective and you get a non-intuitive look into their thought process. You get to see their emotional logic, and you can leave yourself for a moment and be taken in by a completely different way of viewing the world. But that scares people who believe that their worldview is unassailable. So instead, they gamify fiction and turn it into this game of how quickly can I find stuff that already sits within my strict view of the world.
Yeah, or
And
my strict
the other people's
criteria of what
perspectives.
good media is.
Exactly. It doesn't matter like what the perspective of the author is. And that is why so often you will see these people rely on a very bad faith mutation of the concept of death of the author. And or they will resort to this bizarre, oh, well, truly great stories never really mean to say anything. They only reflect a paradigm of pre-existing objectively good story characteristics that need to be repeated, otherwise it is deviance, failure, and ugliness.
Yeah, and that is a strange thing that you see from people who it's like, it's funny. If you put them in a room, you couldn't imagine two people who would hate each other more than like Jordan Peterson and Lily Orchard, but they have
Yeah, yeah.
strikingly similar views on the nature of storytelling when you cut past all of the specific lingo. I think so. To talk a little bit about what our experience with the tips were, because they're so easily separated into these different categories. And I think each one weirdly reflects a very unhealthy and unhelpful way of looking at writing, and thus I think is good to deconstruct. One of
Yeah,
them,
like this list is kind of like the Psychonauts level of journeying into like Lily Orchard as a writer and like finding all of her like emotional baggage and all of like the weird hangups that are expressed in very like subconscious hostile ways. Like it feels like you're peeling back the layers of someone who is just not approaching this subject matter in any kind of healthy or constructive way.
yeah, and when we realized we couldn't do the same, that's when we had to quit. But so one of the big things that you see, and it's a commonality between a lot of the tips, is this weird, almost blaming the writer for things that fandoms do, which is really bizarre, or things that a studio would do. Stuff like spoiler culture and things like what people might post on like the social media of a piece of work is like given an inordinate amount of focus.
Like again, that's something that has only become more prevalent in the same kind of like critical spaces. Like there is so much blaming the writers, blaming the fandoms. It was true then. Lily Orchard was a pinnacle of it in her time, still is, and so many other people are like, look at all the thumbnails out there about like, these writers, these directors, these fans, they're so awful and so terrible, and that automatically means that their work or any work vaguely related to something similar to theirs is invalid, not worth your time, and you shouldn't form an opinion on it. You should tune in to the opinion you should already have.
Yeah, it's
And support it monetarily if possible.
yeah, it's a bizarre like sort of groupthink grift. Like, don't get me wrong, I definitely believe that Lily Orchard is a true believer in all of the insane shit that she says, but I think there is just there are certain bizarre fixations. Like, another one is, as we mentioned earlier, shipping culture is a huge thing, and there seems to be this kind of strange focus on you have to do what is best to satisfy the audience in a certain way. And I think it's really strange because if you think about it, I think that conception of art and storytelling is quite a modern thing, you know? This idea of, well, you
Mm.
have to have your demo and you need to bend over backwards to make sure that they feel indulged by every creative decision. And I think in
Well,
the
you know
past
what
it
it
was kind of the
is?
opposite of like
Mm.
you would make the thing and then the people who would like that find it.
Yeah, well, you know what it is, and I think this is sort of a new term to define a behavior that happens in a lot of these spaces, but there are a lot of these people who are demographical Loraxes. They like speak for the imagined audience of a thing and react with a kind of you can't do this or the people I'm speaking for will be very upset with you and you need to change your art as a result. You'll see all sorts of different like demographical Loraxes. The reason I use that term is because they are a distinct thing from the show's actual audience, and they're not even part of the group that they claim to be representing most of the time. It is an appeal to an imagined infraction against an imagined group of people. To narrow down a little bit more on the shipping thing as well, I'm not deep into shipping culture, thank goodness, because I am, a 33-year-old man. But the thing about it is that I thought that the whole appeal of shipping is that you find two characters in a work of fiction that you think might be nice together, and you imagine that as a fan pairing, and maybe you do fan art, maybe you do fan fiction, maybe you just think about it, maybe you just like that concept. But when it becomes this like, oh, well, these characters are a incorrect kind of ship, or this is like out of step with the canon of the show in a way that makes it illegitimate, or the writers of the show themselves are performing an illegitimate ship in the eyes of someone else. It's like, this feels so divorced from the concept of taking two fictional characters and going, now kiss. It feels so much more like using that instead as a bludgeon to be like, I wish Gandalf's hat was red instead of gray. It's like what are we doing here?
Yeah, it does kind of lose its way, and you start to get into this sort of maladaptive shipping when it isn't about what you like to do in fandom spaces. It's about what other people should be doing in those fandom spaces, the moral like weight that is assigned to that, and like you were saying, this bizarre entitlement that like, well, yes, what I want is the right decision. Therefore, not only should the showrunners make it canon, like, there's this one insane tip that we saw early on that was like, if your show is 5 seasons long, you should make the ship canon midway through season 3, so there's plenty of time to enjoy it. And it is, in hindsight, what an absolutely delusionally egomaniacal way to think of, not only should
Yeah.
you and your work put together the two characters I want to see together, you need to put it at this time and you need to show them enough that I feel like I can get all of my jollies out of it.
Yeah, and that is another thing that Lily Orchard is an example of that I think is a rampant, destructive, idiotic, uncreative way to look at media, is that the idea that a thing needs to happen in the canon of the show in order for you to have permission to think about it and enjoy it. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just be satisfied writing your own little fan fictions, your own little AUs, your own, like, fan art. It has to be something that you get vindication from the creator of the show doing the thing. And this is not just shipping. Like, people who are in the the not so savory side of the power scaling community, for example, will use a character's win-loss record to determine whether or not that character is well written or not, or whether or not we're allowed to like that character, as if this conceit of fiction is some kind of sports game where objectively a character with more wins is doing better in the season competitively than before. It's not a game of skill, and it's not something where you can't then go and write your own story where your favorite character wins or loses to anyone else, given that you create something else. The idea that canon needs to adhere to outside sources is not just foolish, it shows a severe lack of imagination. This insecurity in having fantasies outside of like the escapism pill that is pre-subscribed to you, and you have to do everything exactly how the people in charge of your favorite toys would do it, or you riot.
Yeah, it does become this thing of it takes on a bizarre sort of religious quality of how each of these people become like high priests to the sort of imagined god of it all, and it's this really surreal scientification of art where people are trying to introduce these kind of empirical and objective metrics. And it's so funny that this is something that is true in like the maladaptive parts of shipping culture. This is something that is true in the maladaptive parts of power scaling culture. And the thing is, we're not saying that shipping or power scaling can't be really fun when you chill about it.
No, here's the thing. That's the thing. It's like you have permission to smash your two action figures together and have them kiss or fight each other to the death. You always had that permission. You don't need to stratify it, and you especially don't need to make it the author's problem that they disagree with you about your interpretation of their work.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that is this, like, nasty streak of entitlement from Lily, who, again, has only ever made really seedy takes on other people's work, which, obviously, we're not knocking fanfiction. We love fanfic. We love fan art. God, people have made it of shows we've made in the past, whether it's the Kingmaker histories, Less is Morgue, or some more recent stuff we'll talk about in a bit. But these folks don't have this same, like, drive towards this is how it should have been, and you're evil for not making that a reality.
Well, that's the thing, Henry. It goes to the sort of final position of the goalposts in both Lily Orchard's rules and all of these other... Literally, this video, if we didn't already have a title for it, this video could be titled, Lily Orchard is Everything Wrong with Maladaptive Fandom, because I think that is very much the case. And I think these patterns are seen repeated throughout all of this stuff. But the final position, it always comes back to this, like, well, you didn't listen to my moralizing of this work or my ideas about what the canon should be. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring a very serious, very real topic, such as abuse, or such as war crimes, or such as any number of other things that YouTube will demonetize us for if we go into deeper depth with. But this idea of, you didn't listen to me, so now we're all going to feel sad because real people are suffering, and it's time to turn the discussion from a discussion of cartoons or mass media franchises or whatever else we're talking about into the literal downfall of society at the hands of people who don't take the YouTube critic seriously. That's the final position.
It's so true, and the morality of Lily Orchard and her tips are particularly bizarre. One that we talked about in the kind of lost audio you can see on Patreon is there was one tip that said a hero who doesn't kill a villain who is actively going on to murdering people isn't noble, they're enabling. But then literally a few tips later was something like, if you have killed more than 10,000 people, you're irredeemable. And, you know, we kind of made the sort of like cheeky jokes in our first video of like, oh, Lily, so you're saying that if you kill 9,999 people, you still have a chance? And I still agree with that being like a very simple reason this is dumb. But
Yeah.
the wider thing is this, like, this bizarre idea of murder is bad unless it is a tool to achieve my ends, which feels actively sinister.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's this idea that, like, fiction doesn't have individual moral frameworks for each kind of story that is being told. It instead has one moral and ethical framework, and it is the framework of the interpreter. And the interpreter decides whether or not a work of fiction is legitimate or not based on pre-existing stuff. And very often, outside of Lily Orchard, which is seemingly an appeal to Lily Orchard's taste is kind of like where she draws all of her authority on all of these topics. A lot of these people will back this up into very organized religion places or very traditionalist perspectives that always leave somebody in the lurch. And when this is like applied to all fiction, you end up getting stories told by somebody who has a different experience in life, and their morality is being critiqued from the perspective of someone who already would frame them as the bad guy. Like, this is going to happen all across the board unless we realize that art is not made with one particular good guy, bad guy dynamic in mind. That's not to say that not all works have something to say about morality or the human experience or, God forbid, politics, but it's not going to be your politics. It's not necessarily going to be your good and bad, and it's not necessarily going to be fucking your culture.
No,
it's none of this is set in stone.
And it's a weird
There is no
commonality.
stone, as a great man once said 5 years ago.
It's a weird commonality between Lily Orchard and in our response to Just a Robot, that video we made, another guy who has skeletons. But it's that same weird thing of like these people. It's like, God damn it, could you watch more than like 5 things? Because with both of them, it's always Avatar, it's always Steven Universe, it's always whatever like flavor of the month Netflix animation is algorithm friendly at the time, and that becomes the whole basis for their understanding of the world. You don't get the sense that they're curious people.
Again, it's the existence of exceptions to their worldview that is offensive. It doesn't matter if there is stuff out there that they would love that could be their favorite thing ever, as long as there are things that exist outside of what they believe art to be. It's like there is an unforgivable wrongness to art that must be corrected and must be fought against with all of their online being. Here's the thing, Henry. I think we have expressed enough disgust about the kind of person Lily Orchard is and about the kind of critic she is. I think we can safely say that we have covered the tips again. Maybe we talk to our audience a little bit to talk about what changed, what's new, what happened to the 2 professional writers in the 5 years of time since we recorded that fateful video and put ourselves on this path of being in this call again.
No, it's true, because at the end of the day, as much as part of the horror comes from the world changing, it's also very true that we've changed. And the way that we've changed and the things that we've done and seen definitely affects how we felt going back. And there've been, in my opinion, mostly good changes. We've had some misfortunes along the way, as I think everyone has in these past 5 years.
Yeah, and I gotta say, too, like, the whole professional writing thing, it does have its own share of hardships, and, we stand by a lot of there was a whole writer's strike in the, like, intervening time between the last video and this video. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, a lot of stuff we won't talk about as well that, we've experienced, but it's hard out there for everybody, This is not easy, and it's a lot easier to diminish from the outside the concept of writers as like this unassailable elite group of myth makers and storytellers who get everything they want.
And you're crazy if you ever did think that. My God.
Yeah, because it's not the case, It's life ain't easy over here in the pen monkey cages.
Well, that's the thing. It's because life ain't easy for anyone, and
the
thing is, there's a lot of ways in which we as writers are like deeply privileged. To talk a little bit about our writing journey, when we first made that video, the sort of experience that we had under our belts were shows like fucking Conjuria and The Hidden Frequencies and, unfortunately, The Heads of Sierra Blanca. We were about sort of in the first third of the first season of Less is Morgue, which has since ended. It's not a super exciting story, I'll admit. People just went different ways, had different
Right,
ideas.
right. I think what's interesting too about all of that is that I want to be like really upfront. The reason why I was a professional writer at the time of that video is because I had started working with you. Before that, my like the extent of my writing work would have been writing for YouTube videos, like writing scripts in that regard. And don't get me wrong, I've gone on to do some of my own work on the side, but it is one of those things where we were still very green, I think it's fair to
Oh,
say. And I was
100%.
especially very green.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because the thing is, since then, we've had humbling experiences. Stuff like Less is Morgue, which for a while we thought of as this kind of, as a lot of episodic comedies seem to be, this sort of perpetual motion machine, which, frankly, it was the very fact that we thought it was that. And the very fact that we went all in, the fact that we made so much art for it, thanks to the hard work of Meg, Jasper, and Percy, the fact that we released so many episodes led, frankly, to a lot of burnout for people on the team. And again, we still had wonderful things for it. We made a name for ourselves. We learned a lot about writing. We got closer to friends and collaborators that we adore and think of some of our closest, like Addison and Zooey. And so many good things come out of it, but at the same time, it's one of those things where having to kind of say goodbye to projects that you hadn't planned to say goodbye to due to just very human circumstances of chance in this crazy world we live in, it does humble you. And I think for a while we felt a kind of like bitterness before we processed it and became a lot more zen.
I would say that it was kind of a long night in our search for like for the next sunrise. And part of this was a lot of the writing work we did in the intervening times. We had to kind of separate the stuff we were passionate about versus the stuff that we would be able to complete in a more easy way and would sort of give us a paycheck immediately. And what was kind of the most frustrating, I think, on a like time level is that we didn't skimp on either. We didn't skimp on either the writing we needed to do for money or the stuff that we knew wouldn't go anywhere immediately, not for years, and in some cases still hasn't gone anywhere, but we did all of it and we did it both. You know, being a professional writer, I think it doesn't mean only writing for pay. It means that we are paid to write, but it doesn't mean that all of our writing is, well, like, call me back when you got fat stacks of cash and tell me when I care. No, we care deeply about all of the stories that we have, and I think the frustrating thing is we have more stories to tell than we can A, write about, and B, be like reasonably paid about. And it's, you know, it's all about juggling a lot of those responsibilities.
No, it's true. It's true. And if you aspire to be a writer, I'm not going to be one of those cynics who's like, "Oh, I don't fucking recommend it. It's the hardest job in the world," because it's not. It's really not. I come from a working class family. My dad was formerly a road worker until he had a shoulder injury and has become a landscaper. And my mum is a teaching assistant at a primary school in my town. I know that as jobs go, getting paid to write, even if sometimes what you're being paid to write is really dumb and stupid and draining, is an objectively cushy job compared to what a lot of people have to go through on the daily. Not that it isn't draining and difficult in its own unique ways. I'll tell you some humbling stuff. I'm going to stay vague enough about this that I don't break any NDAs. But to give you an
that's
idea
what I'm worried
of some
about.
of the exciting things that the world of writing will take you to, some of the paid writing that we've done between us has consisted of, for example, being for a period a minion of Alex Saldea, and both writing a half of the heads of Sierra Blanca and going and making fake Reddit posts to try and astroturf a fake serial killer. We've written a comical number of scripts for an extremely popular children's Minecraft Let's Play channel, and a number of non-fiction in addition to storytelling internet outlets that we've done uncredited just for the pay. We've had the privilege to work on bloody disgusting shows like Mayfair Watcher Society, the official Trevor Henderson show.
Let's not forget, Henry, like, you and I have both taken extended delves into the lore of the Backrooms in terms of learning it, researching it, and creating narratives out of it on a YouTube channel that we won't tell you and you may never find.
Yeah, no, we have been paid by large companies to write about both the Backrooms and the SCP Foundation at length. We are veritable experts on both subjects and we'll be using this in later videos, believe us. But
yeah, it's been weird and frustrating not being able to talk about some of this stuff, but also that's the way of this thing, right? Because like you almost want to put up this facade of like, yeah, well, all of my stuff is just my own original characters doing their own things and people just hand me money for it. And that's that's not all how
no, it's true. In fact, it will be the rare few times in life that the money people will approach and say, hey, I'm going to give you this so you can tell your story with your characters. And believe us, and this is part of why we have such a visceral frustration and hatred at Lily Orchard suggesting otherwise. Believe us, when you're given that deal, there's strings. They're going to want to have input. They're going to want to have editing on it. They will make suggestions that you think are really bad, but you're going to have to take them because they're paying for it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, is that I feel like, and the world has only become more like this, or at the very least, we've moved out of this mindset and have identified it more broadly. There are so many people who view anything that they have as a skill or as a hobby or as a thing that just brings them joy as a means in which to gain clout and infamy.
Hustle culture.
And an ability to, like, is that like, oh, I like doing writing or doing like little films or doing like, something. I'm going to make that into a business model. And don't get me wrong, if you try hard enough, if you practice the skill, you can get paid for it. But at the same time, if that comes at the expense of doing it your own way for your own thrill of it and to just practice the skill on your own, you'll be missing out on a whole part of writing that is really the fun part. And it's a part that Henry and I have crucially not missed out on.
No, it's
and have
true.
continued to cultivate within ourselves this whole time.
That's the thing. It's really funny to say. We are telling you the truth when we say we are two professional writers, but some of the most enjoyed writing we've done is purely for the love of it.
Exactly. Because we are two writers, professional or otherwise. If we were no longer employed in any major writing way ever, we would still be writers. If somehow overnight every single writing job in the world closed down and we had to forage for scraps in the Mad Max future where there are no books, no movies, no articles, no nothing, Henry and I would still be writing shit.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, as we've said on many of these videos, I think the way that you know you're a creative person is that you don't feel like you can be happy if you're not doing it.
Yeah, and I think to bring that full circle, I think that you see so many people substituting their own insecurity and their own feeling of, I am going to control creativity and create 1,000 years of content that appeals specifically to me. And that's the same thing as being a consummate creator myself.
Yeah.
And I just think the world needs more people who are willing to just say, no, this online space of people who are trying to hijack the creative minds and even the audience opinions of everybody in the space of storytelling. More people just need to say no to that and stand up and do things for their own sake. Do things because those preferences that you hold deep inside aren't something that you need to force onto other artists. There's something that you can bring into the world and find the people that will reach.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's often one of the best things about being a creative person, regardless of which way that your skills go. Whether you're writer, artist, actor, musician, animator, director, game designer, anything you can imagine. If ever you see something and you were like, man, I don't like the way they did that. I wish they did it this way. Congratulations, that's your story. Go tell it. And to kind of round things out, if you're wondering who are these guys, I vaguely remember them repeatedly rambling about something about ghosts and ghouls 5 years ago. What can I go check out to see if these guys have anything worth saying when it comes to writing? Because, the proof is in the pudding. I think it is fair to say the quality or the merit of someone's writing advice or creative advice can be tied to how they've put those things into effect in their own work. So I have 2 projects that I would like to direct everyone to. The first one is a little steampunk fantasy crime show called The Kingmaker Histories that just a day ago, as of the recording of this video, finished its 3rd season. That's right, there are 3 seasons of this. Over 30 episodes. What's the show about, Gus?
So the Kingmaker Histories is an alternate history about the fall of the Valorian Socialist Republic and the rise of a new regime, and a lot of it revolves around the whereabouts of the Kingmaker Diamond, a jewel from a different dimension that is embedded in the head of one Colette Geiss, who is currently doing all sorts of crimes and capers with Iron Winterlich, a trio of criminals. So they get up to all sorts of alternate history, political thriller type stuff, and heists and fun times. And Addison Peacock is in it, and she plays a alarmingly sexy flesh witch. So if you're into all of that, go and check that out.
Yeah, it's Meg's baby, and between us, I think we've written 5 episodes on it. So if that sounds fun and you want to see those, go check them out. But listen from the beginning because, it's a good story. If you like weird fantasy crime stuff with just the most off-the-wall world building you've ever heard, you've got to check out the Kingmaker Histories here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, lots of great magic and world building, and also a lot of genuine, really fun historical details from real life packed in there.
No, it's true.
It's such a cool hybrid. It's such a cool hybrid of a period piece and a sort of Cowboy Bebop style
Caper of the
crime
week.
caper story.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And the other one, which is a lot newer, and as of this recording, only has 1 episode out, but might have a few out, or at least 2, by the time this comes out, is mine and Addison's show, KILLJAM XXX, which is a deranged, a hyper-violent, very, queer, but in a, sexed up, crazy way. I'll put it this way. It is a show that Lily Orchard would want to pour kerosene on and burn until not even ashes remain.
What if Cyberpunk Edgerunners and Glow, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, had a baby, and that baby's name was KILLJAM XXX?
Yeah, you follow also Addison Peacock as a different kind of alarmingly sexy character, Faustina Fetamine, a crazy, strange gal who loves chopping people up with a big machete called Gutter in the death game sport of KILLJAM. And
yeah, she is a storied athlete with a talent for killing people, but she's also one of the sweetest, most endearing characters that we've ever really devised. She is just so lovable and so silly and so wacky. It's that good gap moe between she can be your angle or your devil.
Exactly. And if you're in for more sort of the bad boy, we've got our dear friend, frequent contributor of the show and exec producer on KILLJAM XXX, Zooey LeFou, who is in everything these days, from Another Crab's Treasure to the recent Bunny and Fox cartoon that's been popping off and going kind of viral. Zooey plays Bellamy Pink, who is a morally flexible con artist who is hoping to kind of ally with Faustina as his meal ticket out of the horrifying situation he's in, where people want to take his body parts for money.
Yeah, he's the cybernetically enhanced twink of Wall Street. He's everything that implies.
He certainly is. So if you do want to check out our bona fides, I recommend checking out The Kingmaker Histories and KILLJAM XXX. That's KILLJAM XXX, just the letter 3 times. Here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and if you love them, awesome. If you hate them, thanks for giving them a try anyway. We appreciate you giving us a chance.
Yeah, and regardless, ultimately, we're here on this YouTube channel because we like talking about creativity and we have a lot more to give. And we're not here to tear down other people's fiction. We're not here to tell you how you should do your things. We're telling you that, hey, that thing you want to do it. You want to do it your way, and be creative and have fun with it. The world needs more people who are unafraid to do that.
It does, and I will tell you what, as a commitment to our desire to uplift other creators as well, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for hearing us ramble about Lily Orchard, our creative lives, and our beloved currently running projects. If you have an online creative project you're currently doing, or if you have a project that you've wanted to get off the ground for years and you feel like this video has given you the final push, self-promo, tell us about it in the comments, and we promise that every single person who is talking or sharing about their project will get a like from the channel down there.
And that is a Two Professional Writers guarantee.
Take us to court if you disagree.
Or we are not alive.
Bye-bye.